Hi everyone, this is Drew Reddening from Courage Candy Rehab Institute. Right now we're just going to go over some additional settings that you can make on your quad stick that I sometimes find beneficial for some people based on what their preferences are. Later we're going to go over some more advanced settings on the quad stick and more in advanced programming too. So here you can change some settings in your quad stick in the Quadstick Manager program. So under here, Joystick, this is one I occasionally change for people. This changes that sensitivity on the joystick, so how sensitive it is to movement. So if I increase this, it would actually make it less sensitive. So if somebody has really good range of motion, I sometimes increase this because that makes games a little bit easier to play sometimes because it's a little bit easier to get accurate because that joystick isn't quite as touchy. So out of the box, the quad stick, it comes at about 20. Sometimes I increase it to about 25 or a little bit more for some individuals that have really good range of motion. Otherwise, 20 works just fine, and I would say try that for a while. And if you think you need to make that adjustment, that's just keep in mind that that is an option here. So by sliding these bars further this way, it would make it less sensitive, and sliding it down would make it more sensitive. One other programming setting that I want to go over in the Quadstick Manager program that I change for more advanced users once they get the breathing under control for those soft and normal sip and puffs is under this tab here, this sip and puff tab. So right here you can see it says the low threshold delay. So that's how long it takes to activate one of those soft sips or soft puffs. So when I do like the soft sips and soft puffs, from the previous videos you heard that it's like a long wispy noise and you hear that beep, and that's after about 1 second. So for more advanced users, as they get that breathing under control and they know exactly how much they need to sip or puff into the controller to activate those, I usually would decrease this. For beginner users, this is a perfect place to start out with because you don't want to accidentally activate those soft sips and soft puffs. So if we shorten that too soon, it just gets confusing. So first I'm going to go switch over to Robert, and you can see what just this normal 1 second soft sip and soft puff sound like. So I'll switch over from here right now, and you can just hear that 1 second.
Okay, now I'm here with Robert, and we're just going to show the soft sips. So right now it's at a 1 second long soft sip, and this is the same for the soft puff as well. So they'd be the same noise, except they would just be blue on here for the sip and red for the puff. So right now it's at 1 second, so that's the default your quad stick will be at out of the box when you get it and order it. So we'll just do the 1 second here. So you would hear that wispy noise for about 1 second, then it would beep, indicating that it's activated.
Okay, so now I'm going to actually decrease this. So for like more advanced users, we would want to maybe decrease this because it just makes activating those controls quicker. And making those controls faster makes them more favorable to use in the game. So I'm going to cut this down about 1/4 at 250 milliseconds. This is what I have Robert set as. It works well because it's not as short. It's not so short where it gets Robert gets accidental activations with it, but it's not so long where it's too slow to activate in a game and it interferes with his gameplay. So I set it to 250 milliseconds. So I'm going to switch over to Robert here, and you can just hear the difference for how long this one takes versus going back to just that 1 second activation.
Okay, so now we change that soft sip to 250 milliseconds, which is 1/4 of a second. So this would be the more skilled user, someone who is more able to control their breathing. So let's listen to the soft sip. So you see how quick that is? So that's, you just hear that wispy noise for just 0.25 seconds, and then you'll hear that beep. So for more skilled users, this will allow them to activate those soft sips and soft puffs a little bit quicker and get those controls faster in games, which makes the gameplay a little bit more efficient in the long run.
Okay, so that's what that one sounds like. So you can hear the difference there. So it's quite a bit quicker here that we cut it down to 1/4 the time. So and like some people might just want half the time, so at 500 milliseconds, or some people might want even shorter than this, or you can actually even set it to no delay at all. So it's just based on what their preferences are and how quick they want to be able to access those soft sips and soft puffs. Remember, whenever you change anything um, with in these tabs for the preferences, go down here to and click save preferences to Quadstick while your Quadstick's plugged in. Otherwise, it won't change these settings. So when you change the low threshold delay, um, and you want to try that out, just click Save Preferences to Quadstick, and then you can unplug your Quadstick and plug in your game console and try those new settings out. The next thing I want to go over for the Quadstick is how to do things Bluetooth. So the Quadstick has Bluetooth capabilities, but you need to set it into Bluetooth mode in order for to take advantage of those Bluetooth capabilities. So if I want to, let's say I'm gonna go into my mouse profile here, and I want to make that a Bluetooth profile. So I just open my custom mouse profile. I'll wait for it to open here. So under the first page of the mouse profile, right here under where it says mouse mode normal, there's a little drop down menu. And it's already set to Bluetooth here, but let's say it was set to USB before. So in most profiles, it will just be set to USB. For gaming, it has to be USB. But for mousing and connecting, let's say you have like an Android phone or an Android tablet, those can also accept mouses and keyboards. So I could Bluetooth connect my phone, my quad stick up to my phone or tablet as well. So if I wanted to make this into a Bluetooth to connect via Bluetooth to my computer or my phone, or let's say I have it USB connected to my computer, but I want to once in a while switch profiles and connect up to my phone to text and uh, go on Snapchat, etc. Uh, and then so I can switch between my computer and phone. I would set this here to Bluetooth, and uh, then I would just do the add-ons, quad stick, and then load this up to my quad stick. The second thing I have to do after I set it to Bluetooth mode on my profile is I have to go in here in the Quadstick Manager Program, and under this MISC tab for miscellaneous, you have a section labeled Bluetooth. So here, for this first tab for the device, if you're doing it as a mouse and a keyboard, so in this case I'd be using it as a mouse and a keyboard, I would do combo. So in most cases you would want to click combo, um, since the quad stick is both a mouse and a keyboard. So I click that as combo since I'm connecting up to my phone or computer. Authentication. So that's what this stands for here. I would set this to the 2 or the 4. So 2 authorization. So this setting means that I just go on my device and I pair it up and it will just pair. I don't have to put any code in or anything. The 4 here, if I set it to 4, that means when I initially pair up my quad stick, I have to put in a code. And the code is just 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the difference between these two. It doesn't make a huge difference which one you make, um, which one you do. It's just based on what your preferences are. Uh, the last thing is here. Um, this is how it pairs. So I would always choose under the connection as pair. This means that it will stay paired. So when I switch to my Bluetooth profile, it'll automatically pair up to my device each time. And I just want to specify too, so I mentioned this one, if you pick 4, you have to put in a code. So that's just a one-time thing. So initially when you pair up your device, you put in that code. After that, if you click connection pair, it'll automatically pair up and you don't have to put that code in. That's just the first time you pair it up. So here I would just click pair if you want your device to stay connected to your quad stick. So those are the Bluetooth settings here um, that you would pick for your quad stick if you want to connect your computer or your phone to the device. And then after you make those changes, down here, this tab here, it says Save Preferences to Quad Stick. I don't have the quad stick plugged in right now, so it's not. Um, I'm not able to click on it. But if I did, I'd click on this, and that would save any changes I made here uh, to the Bluetooth settings. So that's how you would connect a Bluetooth device to your quad stick. Um, and then at the time, the first time you set it up, you would switch to your Bluetooth profile, and then you would have to go onto the device you want to connect Bluetooth to. You would go into the Bluetooth settings, and then you would pair your quad stick up. And then, like I said, after that, as long as it's in this pair mode, you should never have to um, go through that process again. It should just automatically pair when you switch to that profile.
Okay, so now with Robert, and we're just going to show the Bluetooth capabilities of the quad stick. So he's just going to switch to his Bluetooth profile on his quad stick, which is connected to his phone. So now you see here, I'm going to zoom in on his phone. He's connected, and now his quad stick is connected up to his phone. So now he's actually controlling a mouse on his phone here. So he wants to go in to anything on his phone, he can just use the mouse and click on it. And he's got the same exact mouse settings as he does on his computer for his phone as well. So all the ones we went over for the computer work for his phone, except it's just Bluetooth connected. So you see here he's able to use the mouse pretty easily to navigate his whole phone. He's just using this kind of same sip and puffs as you'll see in that computer video for the quad stick uh, to navigate his phone.
Okay, right now what I want to go over is one of the more, I would think, advanced features of the quad stick. It's not something that's in any manual or anything, but it's a feature that I like to take advantage of on the quad stick to do something to kind of increase independence, increase what you can do with the quad stick. So, because one great thing about the quad stick is that you can control all these different devices. So I can control my PS4, I can control my computer. Um, the problem is though, if I want to switch what device I want to control, I have to unplug it from one and plug it into the other. So this solution here actually lets me use my quad stick to switch between multiple devices that it's plugged into. So doing so to do this, we actually use what's called a USB hub. So what a USB hub is here I'll pull it up. So a USB hub is a device that we can actually plug one device into. Let's say it's a mouse, a keyboard, or the quad stick, and we can actually, so that's the input. So I plug my device into it, and on the output I can plug two separate USB devices into for it to control, and then I can actually hit a button and it switches between the two devices. So if it's a mouse, I would have like a computer and a laptop plugged in back here on the outputs, and when um, my mouse is on the number 1 here, it'd be controlling my computer. And then I would hit the button and it would switch, and then the mouse would actually be controlling my laptop after that. So then I can actually use the same device to control two different devices just by hitting the button and switching between them. Um, so to do this on the quad stick, we're actually going to take advantage of um, one of the digital outputs. So what the digital output is, it controls on the back of your quad stick. They have what looks like almost like a headphone jack, but it's a mono stereo jack, and it controls. Um, it can actually essentially hit a switch for us, and it can like close a switch and activate an output. So and we can actually on like the correct USB switcher device, we can actually have it control switching between these two outputs. So then I could actually plug my quad stick into this, and it could actually I could use one of the controls on the quad stick to actually switch between my quad stick controlling my computer and my game console just by activating one sip and puff or lip or whatever I'm controlling. So I'm going to go over how we're going to do this. So first we actually need the correct USB hub in order to do this. What I mean by correct USB hub, we actually need one with similar to how the quad stick has that almost like a headphone jack looking thing on the back of it. We need a USB switcher that has that as well. I like this one. It's the Roswell the 4-port USB 3.0 peripheral sharing switch, because this one actually has it on here. So you can see right here it has that almost like a headphone jack, but it's actually a mono stereo jack on the back of the device. And that actually, you can actually plug in a switch to it. So see this remote here? You actually plug that into the device and you can actually hit that button and it will switch between the two uh, outputs. But in our case, we're actually going to plug the quad stick into the switch port here and not that switch. So then we can have our quad stick switch between our outputs instead of having that switch do it. So I'm going to show you actually how we're going to do that. So it's actually we would edit one of our profiles in order to do this. So I did it in my default configuration here, but this is a custom one. So I actually made a copy of the default, and I changed the settings in it to allow us to control that output on the back of the quad stick. So I'm going to switch into that profile here. So I'm going to open it up. So here is where I have the control. So I actually want this to set as digital out 2, and I want it either, so that's going to be the outputs. It's going to control the back, that output on the back of the quad stick. So it's essentially when I activate this, going to close a switch for me. And I either want this as pulse or normal. It doesn't really matter too much. And then right here is the control I want to activate on the quad stick. So it could be lip, it could be a sip, a right sip, doesn't really matter. So that's just the control I want to activate in order to switch between my devices. So now I would just upload this onto my quad stick like usual. So I'd go to add-ons quad stick, download to quad stick, and then I would save that to my profile. The next thing I actually have to do is go through the physical setup, and we're actually going to switch over to a video and show you actually how to do the physical setup of the device in order to use this control to, once you have all the parts, to switch between two different outputs. And I can switch between controlling my PS4 or Xbox to my computer. Okay, now I'm going to go over some other really important settings that are going to have to be on your quad stick in order to use this USB switcher to switch outputs with your quad stick. So one thing you have to make sure is under this miscellaneous tab here in the Quadstick Manager Program, up here in the upper right corner you have those digital outputs. So in our programming that we did on the quad stick, we did when we hit whatever control on the quad stick, so in this case it was the lip, it turns on that digital output 2 here, and that switches our devices. So we have to make sure both of these boxes are actually unchecked, because if one of them's checked, that means that digital output is going to be always on, and we don't want that, because then right when we boot up our quad stick, it would automatically hit that switch for us, and then it would just keep holding that switch down, and we don't want that. We want those switches to be open until we hit the lip or whatever control we have it programmed on the quad stick. So that's the first important thing. So just you don't really have to understand why these have to be unchecked, but just make sure these are unchecked, otherwise it won't work. The next thing is within your game profiles. Depending on which game profiles you're using, there sometimes is some settings that might affect your ability to switch with the USB switcher. So, and it has the same thing to do with these digital outputs. So, if you're loading profiles from the Quadstick factory profiles, some of them have a tab on here, and I'll show you. So it's under the Preferences tab, and under the Preferences tab we can actually change some of the settings once we get in one of our profiles. So here all the way to the right down here, I have this Preferences tab. So when I open this up, you see here it has these digital outs on it. So digital out 1 and digital out 2. So it has values 0 and 1 here. So 1 means that it's on, 0 means that it's off. So in some of the Quadstick factory profiles, they actually will, once you get into the profile, even if you have it set within the Quadstick Manager program that both these digital outputs are off, this will actually override that. So we want to make sure if this Preferences tab is here, we want to make sure if it has digital out 1, digital out 2, that they're both 0. So we got to change both of those to 0. Because then now, otherwise that switch would be closed. And we don't want that, because then when we switch to that profile, it'll actually hit the switch and then it'll actually switch our device. So we want to make sure those are both at 0, or we could just delete this Preferences tab altogether if we're not using it at all. So just make sure that that is a setting. Once again, you don't really have to know why we have to do this. Just know that in order for this to work properly, these both have to be set to 0 or off.
Okay, so now we're going to go over the physical setup of the USB switcher on the Quadstick. So first thing you need here is this cord right here. So this is a mono 3.5 millimeter stereo jack. So it's 3.5 to 3.5. I'll include a link to that at the end of the video as well. So what that does is that right here on this out here, it says out. It looks like a little headphone jack. This stereo jack will actually plug directly into this out on the Quadstick here. So that's our output, and that's where that the Quadstick will control that relay inside, and it'll actually close it and activate that switch for us. And this will be plugged into our USB switcher, and then that will activate the USB switcher. Okay, so this is the USB switcher right here. So here we have the indicator light, so I'll move it a little bit closer. So we have a 1 and a 2 right here. So these just correspond to which device you're connected to. So the Quadstick is plugged in on this side. So this is the input of the USB switcher. So this is our Quadstick will be connected to both outputs here. So one of these is going to the computer, the other one is going to the game console. Right now the light says we're on number 2, so right now we're connected to the game console. So the Quadstick, since that's our input here, is going to be connected to our game console. Then when Robert activates that switch, and that'll switch us from 2 to 1, so then the Quadstick will then be controlling the computer. And then, so how the Quadstick does this is that stereo mono cable that we had plugged in on the output of the Quadstick is plugged in here on the USB switcher. So this is a stereo input jack as well, except this one is actually a 2.5 millimeter stereo jack and not 3.5. So we actually need here is a converter piece. So this is a 2.5 to 3.5 millimeter mono stereo converter. So and I'll put a link to these as well on where to purchase these. These are very cheap. And this is pretty effective here. So I have that plugged in just to convert that from 2.5 to 3.5 millimeters, and then I have the other end of that stereo cable plugged in to that. So then the quad stick can hit that switch for us and switch us from 2 to 1. And then once again, the quad stick's plugged in on the input of the USB jacks, and on the outputs, these two here, one of them goes to our PlayStation, the other one here goes to our computer. So the other end of these are just output, they're just USBs. So then the USB plugs into the game console and the computer. So that's the USB switcher device. Next, we'll just show Robert using the control on the quad stick to switch between 2 and 1 and vice versa. So then he can switch between his computer and his game console. Cool. Okay, so now Robert's going to switch from controlling his computer to his game console just by using that simple control on the quad stick. So he's going to hit the lip here, and you'll see that light turn from one side to the other. So we'll hit the lip, and you notice here his quad stick is actually going to reset because now it unplugged from his game controller, and now it's plugged into his computer. So now it's going to reboot up again. So we'll give it a second, and you'll notice the light change as well on the USB switcher device. So that means now it switched from a 2 to a 1. That means now we're plugged into whatever is that USB 1 output, and that's our computer. So now our quad stick's now connected to our computer, so it's booted up now. Now if we wanted to switch, let's say, back to our game console, the same control again, so we'll do the lip again. And there, now you'll see the light switched over again. And now our quad stick is plugged into our game console again. So that's how the USB switcher functions. It's nice because it allows us to have the quad stick control or be plugged into multiple devices at once. You can also get this similar device connected to 4 different outputs. So instead of just having a computer and a game console, let's say you have multiple game consoles or multiple devices you want to plug the quad stick into, you can have actually up to 4 on that one. So that's another option too. So then the quad stick can easily switch between 4 different devices just with that simple command.
Everyone, so now we're going to go over how to do infrared controls from your quad stick. So actually on the quad stick there's actually a little infrared emitter. So what that is like on your TV remote, there's a little emitter on it that sends an infrared command to your TV and lets you change channels and do all the TV functions just through the buttons on your TV. So the quad stick can actually be programmed to do the same thing. So it looks like almost like a little LED on the back of the quad stick right above the RAM mount. And that's what sends those infrared commands. So we're going to show you how to program infrared commands into your quad stick for your TV or any other infrared device that you want to control. So the first thing is we're just going to open this under the Quadstick factory profiles, this Samsung TV one. So once again, this is a factory one, so we can't edit this directly, but we can use this one, make a copy, and then edit that copy of it. Okay, so we're going to go to File, make a copy, and we'll just keep it as copy of Samsung TV. We'll exit out of the factory one here and wait for this one to load up.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so now it's loaded up here, so I'll just show you, we'll look through on what we got on this sheet here. So here we have our output functions. This is actually what we want to do on our TV. So the TV on and off, volume up, volume down, etc. So that's what will control what our output is. So anything that starts with IR here is an infrared command. So we can do fast forward, record, pause, mute, menu, all these different commands. So one thing we have to do as well though, in addition to changing these, just so it knows what infrared code to then send, is we actually have to go to this sheet here called IR codes. And this is actually where we actually put in what infrared code we're going to be sending it. And this is where it really depends on what TV you have, or what you're going to control, what this infrared code will be. So here for TV on and off, I'm telling it that this is the infrared code I want it to send. And these are in hex codes. And that's just the type of input the Quadstick needs in order to register the infrared command. So what we actually need to do is find the right hex codes for whatever device we want to control. So um, so here for TV on and off, this is the infrared code it would send, and then for IR aux1, this is the infrared code it would send. We have to make sure for every single thing. If I added IR channel TV channel up, I would have to make sure that I go into my IR codes and I add that here as well, because otherwise it doesn't have anything to reference. So it doesn't have a code to reference then. So then I have to put the code in, the IR code I need right here for IR channel TV up. Otherwise here, if I just put it here without putting it on this page, it will have nothing to reference and won't be able to send any code. So um, I know you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I get these hex codes? So that's what this link is for. So if you go to this document here, so this link will actually take us to a site that we can get those hex codes from. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to open a new search bar. I'm going to paste it up here. Okay, so this is pretty much just an infrared database. It just holds a lot of different infrared commands for a ton of different devices. It's a huge database. It has a ton of devices on it, so most TVs will be within this database, or most infrared devices will be within this database. So first thing you have to do, if you haven't made an account, you actually have to make an account. And then you have to log into that account. So I'm going to log into my account here. So once you create an account and log in, then you can go here to database. Under database, this is where you search for your whatever device you want to control. So let's say I want to control an LG TV. So I'm just going to put in LG, and then I'm going to choose my device type. So that's the brand I just put in. My type, so right now I just want to control a TV, but you see it's got a huge database of a bunch of other devices on here, and I could choose those as well if I wanted to control those devices. But right now I'm just going to pick TV. Model. So this is where it gets a little bit kind of almost like you have to guess. So I don't really know which code group my LG TV is in. I would have to like pick one, program my Quadstick for it, then test it out. If that doesn't work, I would have to then just redo the process again with group 2 and check if that works instead. So here it's not really specific which ones are group 1 and group 2. There's probably somewhere where you can look that up, uh, but I think it's just maybe better to program on and off into your Quadstick, try that out with the code, and then if that doesn't work, just try it out with the other codes. So I'm just going to go with group 1 here. So now I can do one of two things. So first, I could either have it just send a single function. It actually emails me the infrared code. So if I just like chose one specific function from this list, it would actually just email me that code. Otherwise, I could just have it send me the whole code set. So that's what I would probably recommend, just because you are actually limited to, the site limits you to actually just 5 emails a day. So if you're doing individual commands for your TV, unless you only want 5, you would have to wait till the next day to actually get more infrared codes. So I'm just gonna have it send me the whole code set. So here or just a refresh. I put the brand of the device I wanted to control, the type of the device, and then the model of that device. And once again, the model is kind of just sort of a guess, and then we just got to try it out. So I'm going to have it send me this code set, and this is going to send to my email. So now it's sent, so I'm going to go to my email. So here now I'm in my email, and now I can get these infrared codes. So there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of numbers. You actually don't want this whole thing here. So the first thing I want to do is just find the code I want. So right here, these first quotation marks, between those, that's where it actually shows what control it's sending from the what TV remote control it is. Um, so like the adjust button, um, the configure button, the AV mode button, back. So I'm going to go and find channel. So we'll do channel down here. So here's the code for channel down. So there's different types of codes here. I just want part of this, part of these numbers because not all of this is the hex code. The hex code's actually, so you see these numbers and letters in groups of 4 here. So this is actually the whole hex code here. So all these groups of 4 here, so it goes like 4 in a row, space, 4 in a row. These are all my, this is the whole code is my hex code for channel down. So now what I want to do is actually want to copy this, and I'm going to go back to our spreadsheet here, and so I'm going to change this to channel down, and I'm going to paste this into my spreadsheet. So now my hex code is the correct code for my LG TV. So assuming I've tested it and made sure this is the right model. So now I have a channel down here. So now I can go to my first page and I can add, we'll add this one as channel down to the list. And we'll just do it as normal. And then here is where I put the quad stick control I'll be doing to control it. So I'll just do down on the quad stick will make me go channel down. And then for if I want to do the rest of the commands for the TV, I would have to go through the same process. So and I would also have to change all of these as well because these are once again these were for that Samsung TV, not for my LG TV. So here I would actually have to delete the TV on and off one, go back to my email here, and find TV on and off. And then that would be the correct code for my LG TV. So, and then if I wanted to add any more, remember, if I added something to this list here, so if I added IR TV menu, and I added that to my quad stick, I would also have to add that to this, because then it would have to, in order for it to send a command from this list here, it has to be able to reference what that hex code is for that infrared command. So once I added all of those and added all the infrared commands I want from here, and I added all the reference codes from all the commands I added, then I can load it to my quad stick. Then I'd go to add-ons, quad stick, download to quad stick, and then I'd be able to use my quad stick as an infrared controller or the remote for my TV. Keep in mind though that infrared emitter, it's fairly small in the back of your quad stick, so your quad stick will have to be pointed in a direct line of sight to your TV. If you want to um, increase the range that your quad stick can go, or let's say your quad stick, there's no way you can get your quad stick in a direct line of sight, you can get a infrared repeater. Those aren't too expensive. If you purchase one of those, that actually just essentially does exactly what it sounds like it does. It'll receive that infrared code and it'll just repeat it, and it'll send it to your TV. So it'll like, so if your quad stick can't reach your TV, or if it's not pointing the right thing, you can have that infrared emitter in a optimal position that'll receive that code and then be able to hit your TV with it. So that's all the commands. I mean, that's all the setup for TV. It is a little bit more complicated or more work to set up than than other um, uh, profiles on the quad stick, but it is a nice feature to have especially because then you won't have to switch to any other access method in order to control your TV. Um, you can just use your quad stick directly and just switch to that profile.
Okay, so now I'm with Robert. We're going to go over the TV controls on the quad stick. So right now we have programmed the lip is on and off. So let's flip the TV off. So hit the lip. So there the TV turned off. And then since on and off are actually the same infrared code, the same control will actually control both on and off. So we'll do the lip again to turn it back on. That'll send the infrared command to the TV from the back of the quad stick, and we'll turn the TV on. And then what we have programmed for volume right now is up on the quad stick is volume up, so let's go up a little bit. And that's just bringing our volume up, and down on the quad stick is volume down. And see, it's pretty responsive here too. So it sends them pretty instantaneously, which is nice. And then right and left are channel up and down, so we'll go right for channel up, and then we'll go left for channel down. There, and those are the ones we have programmed in the quad stick. Once again, you can program actually any infrared command to the quad stick, so pretty much anything that's on your remote, any button, you can program that right into the quad stick. So keep that in mind too, so if you want to bring up a menu, you could do that. Right now we just have the basics programmed for this TV.